Hi. Before we begin, just so you know you're not alone on this journey, at papernapkinwisdom.com, we've got free tools designed to help leaders like you find clarity and momentum. No pressure, just support. You can grab them anytime. You can even grab them from social media. The link's in the bio.
Welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom, where we share pearls of wisdom shared by some of the world's top entrepreneurs, leaders, and difference makers. Here's your host, Govindh Jayaraman.
Hi, I'm Govindh Jayaraman, and this is Paper Napkin Wisdom, episode 287. You know, sometimes the smallest shift can unlock the greatest impact, and sometimes the wisdom we need most is already in front of us, waiting to be seen in a new way. Today's guest, Sam Toles, has spent his career shaping how stories are told and how communities connect. From leading digital transformation at some of the world's biggest media companies to now reimagining civic engagement through CiviSocial, Sam has discovered something simple and incredibly powerful. On his napkin, he shared out the kind of formula that changes the way teams, leaders, and even whole communities create results. It's about what happens when you give something and add just enough of something else to create a breakthrough. I want you to listen closely because what Sam shares today may just change how you lead, how you empower people, and how you think about success. So as you listen, ask yourself, where in my own world could I apply this formula? And when you have this insight, take action. Because small ideas can lead to big results. And this one just might unlock yours. Let's listen in. Sam Toles, welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom. I'm excited to have you here with me today.
Thanks, Govin. I really am excited about our conversation today.
Yeah, so look, we went on a little bit in the green room about just the virtue of being bald. It's great. You had a nice quote about it. Why don't you share it with the group?
Yeah, the quote comes from Larry David, who is literally one of my favorite people in the world, and he says that bald men simply prepay their aging. Right, so when you're in your 20s, or in my case, in my late teens, when you start losing your hair, it's like the greatest tragedy. But then you look the same for about 25 years. So it really helps in these middle life portions of your timeline.
Absolutely. And so I have a fun origin story around when I decided to get rid of it. Was we were all out at a bar a friend of mine owns at the time, and one of the people that was there was a hairdresser. And he said, what nobody's ever asked me to do is to shave their head completely bald. And I said, today's your day. So the bar owner went up, bought the stuff, wrapped a tablecloth around me, and shaved it right down.
I love this.
Of the bar. So
and ever since, I love this. Mine is, I call my journey to baldness a deprogression of ego. So I did the Propecia and explored getting the surgery. Thank God I never did, because I have friends that have the nasty scar in the back of their head from that foolish endeavor. So then I just started cutting it closer and closer and closer. And when I fully put the razor blade to my head in the shower that day, many, many years ago, I was like, I'm losing my hair, but I'm also leaving my ego behind. And it was the best decision I ever made.
That's awesome. Are you a daily shaver or?
Oh, that's a great question. I do it about every 2 to 3 days. If I'm working with a client, it's every 2. And if I'm just working on paperwork or running the business from my home office, it is every 3.
Yeah. I'm about the 2 to 3 day time frame too. But there are times when, life just gets busy. It's once a week. And
but then the problem with the later is that the razor gets clogged. When the hair gets a little longer, if you go for like 5 or 6 days and then you put your head blade on, because for me, it takes about 5 minutes to go in the shower and get my head right? But when it's long like that, it can take like 10 minutes because the razor gets clogged. You have to constantly unclog. It's a pain. So I try to avoid those long stretches. I totally get it though. When I'm overwhelmed or in the creative zone, absolutely have let my hair go for 7 days.
Yeah, yeah. And it's always a dope moment when it's like that. Like, what have I done to myself?
You
So
definitely have that Homer Simpson moment, and appropriate because it matches our unfortunate follicular challenge.
yeah, well, exactly. But he's got some great one-liners, so it's not that bad. Um, Now, speaking of multiple liners, not one liner, you shared a really great napkin with me, and I can't wait to describe it to everybody and really dig in here. Um, there's some images on your napkin. In the top left, you've got staff, all of them carrying something, and then you've got City Hall in the top right. Underneath it, you got some words: permission plus structure, and an arrow, sorry, with an equal sign as being the stem of the arrow, pointing down to social media success.
Yep.
What? Why did you share that with me?
So it's a wonderful story. And it really is rooted. It's a longer-ish story, but it's rooted in my career. I recently left the private sector. I had a ridiculously successful career. We'll talk a little bit about that in this episode. But I left because of two things. I was feeling unfulfilled as an executive, and I wanted to do something that created positive change. And so I took my mastery of social media and applied it to a place that no one had thought to look, which is local government. But the concept of permission structure actually originated in my private sector career. So initially, early on, before social media even existed, I was making movies and television. I was the Star Trek brand manager for Paramount. I did all kinds of interesting things in traditional media. And I got this amazing role. But right before that role, I had ran for and won a seat on my local city council and served for 4 years. I was some of the most important work I'd ever done, which is why I came back to local government. But I got a job right towards the end of my first council term as the general manager of the Vimeo platform. And, I'd had tremendous success in traditional media, television and film. And so when they hired me, I went in thinking, you know what? I'm going to be the expert here. I'm the media expert who's going to tell these social media kids what they need to do. And I cannot tell you how profound this was. I went to an early conference in the social media space called VidCon, which is the fan conference for YouTube. And I watched a bunch of 12, 13, 14-year-old kids screaming as they chased other nondescript 12, 13, and 14-year-old kids in hordes. I'd never seen anything like it. It was like the Beatles, except they were just these kids. And I looked up at the ceiling at that convention center and said out loud to myself, everything I know about media is wrong. And in 10 years, this was 2014. So in 10 years, these kids are going to be prime media consumers. And they have no relationship with the media that I know. They don't care about film. They don't care about television. All they care about is this. And so I have to learn this thing. And this ties into, working at a platform, social media platform, where I was at that time, 39 years old, the second oldest employee in the company, right? I had a lot of young people, extraordinary, talented young people. And all of them were looking to me as the GM for permission to use their talents. However, what I had to realize is this is no longer about my expertise. This is about me creating a structure that really leverages these young, talented people to reach their full potential in a medium that is yet to be defined. And the easiest analogy, I'm a sports guy, ran content for Bleacher Report, and I'm a huge lifelong Buffalo Bills fan. So I'll give this analogy. Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes were in the same draft class. I would defy anyone to tell me that those two gentlemen don't have equal talent. The difference, the reason the Chiefs have won the number of Super Bowls, have beaten the Bills each and every time, is because of Andy Reid's structure, right? If that draft had gone the other way, if Josh Allen had gone to Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes had gone to Buffalo, the results would be the same because the structure around the talent is what matters. So the last point is, as I've become an entrepreneur and as I now go across the country helping local governments of all sizes, from tiny cities of like 8 or 10,000 people all the way up to huge counties with hundreds of thousands of people, I find the same issue. So this image of City Hall and the people, and those people holding things could be police officers or firefighters with their hoses or parks workers with their rakes or librarians with their books, right? Within City Hall, there are young, talented people who understand and know how to use social media. But government is really bad at giving permission to let talent do their thing, right? So my process is all about how can I create a structure within that government to empower this amazing group of neighbors serving neighbors to tell their story on modern social media, not just Facebook, which every government seems to wallow in and is the most negative platform, but across the spectrum. And that's my permission structure story in a very long nutshell.
You gave me a lot there, and I think there's some enormous brilliance, and I want to make sure that we don't leave any of it. Number one, Star Trek. We could have a 3-hour conversation about Star Trek.
I also managed Stargate, so I have the I have never done Star Wars, but I'm a bit of a sci-fi nerd. So you want to go there? We'll go there.
No, we're not going to do that. But man, could we ever? But I really. I find it very interesting. So in 2014, this is 11 years ago, you were watching what is now normal start to happen, right?
Yep.
At this conference, where you saw young people chasing other young people, nondescript young people, around like they were superstars, because they would become, and they are today, the superstars, right? That's what's one of the big balances of power that have changed. Yes. Is that pretty much anybody with a video camera and a microphone.
Yep. The democratization of media. Yeah, it's incredible.
So what did that do for your concept of reality when you went from managing these mega brands like Star Trek? You can't go to a corner of the earth where people don't know what Star Trek is. So you're managing these mega brands, MGM Studios, and what you're doing is moving from that environment to this other world, which is totally upside down. Yeah. The bottom of the pyramid is where the power exists. Mm-hmm. What did that do to your sense of reality?
Some of the most wonderful and challenging moments of my career exist in that 11 years, because when you have an epiphany, and this is something I think that really motivates entrepreneurs, right? It certainly motivated me, but it took 11 years. Well, it took 10 years for me to really see the light. Almost instantly, I understood, right, that this was absolutely the path that things were going on. And as I learned and got to know social media creators and dove in, the more I was certain that this was where things were going. I ended up leaving Vimeo because at the time, our owner, Barry Diller, was not willing to invest in a strategy to, go head to head with Facebook and YouTube, which were the big behemoths in the space. And I had this chance meeting with the CEO of MGM, who wanted to hire me to run a streaming service that they were considering, which I declined politely, but I gave him some advice around social media. And ultimately, we began a conversation that was like, you should create your own role in the studio that really leans into this digital thing that you've seemed to figured out. And the challenge when I got there, first challenge was Gary was brilliant, but ultimately the board decided that they wanted to go in a different direction. So my champion was removed 6 months into my tenure. He did very well. Don't worry, Gary now runs Dimension, the assets that were the Weinstein Company under a company called Spyglass, and I love the man to this day. But now I'm reporting to what they called with the office of the CEO, which was 9 people. One of my colleagues joked it was like the Nazgul in Lord of the Rings. And trying to explain to traditional television people and traditional film people like myself who had existed in a construct that had defined their ego, their sort of existence was this type of media. Our brands like Stargate and Rocky and James Bond, these are the things that people care about. And when you're the person, the voice in the room saying, hey guys, yes today, but you have to look at the data and you have to look at what's happening, because if you don't pivot into this, you're going to be in serious trouble as a business. And if you look at the media business, if you read anything about the media business, like it was just last year, ironically, 10 years to the day when I had this epiphany, and that 10 years of that audience aging into prime media, that people are like, wait a minute, YouTube is the new television. I mean, YouTube crossed Netflix as the number one watched television on as the number one platform watched on television less than 18 months ago. Today, the gap between YouTube and Netflix just on television, this means that no smartphones, no tablets, no laptops, we're just looking at consumption on the television as itself. The gap today is the entirety of Prime Video. That's how far YouTube has moved, and that's how quickly it's moved. But going to your question, in that 10-year interregnum, as I'd like to call it, I had to speak and report into people that came from traditional media. And so at MGM, right, this was not necessarily well received. Like, well, this is what we do. This is our business. Like, why would we do something different just because you say so? And so I left MGM and went to Bleacher Report. And of course, Bleacher Report, we quickly pivoted from a digital publishing model, a website.com model, to become this massive behemoth sports media powerhouse, because I saw this and they gave me permission. And so we leaned into Instagram and TikTok and went from 30 million followers to over 108 million followers in less than 2 years. And it's the core of the business today, right? The old school.com publishing is no longer there. The problem was that the television group that Bleacher reported to, and again, I had the unfortunate situation of my wonderful CEO, Howard Mittman, leaving the organization underneath the television group, right? The TNT Sports parent company. We had always been treated separately. Once Howard left, all of a sudden, now we're reporting into TV folks. And the TV folks thought of us as a tune-in to the basketball games that were on TNT or the baseball games that were on TBS, right? This was our function. And I fundamentally disagreed. Why? Because ratings for sports were down double digits. And we had grown, by 3+X our audience at the same time on a different medium. So having those constant arguments with people that just can't see the vision is what inspired me to say, screw it. I'm going to go do this thing in a place where, probably people aren't going to be receptive, local government, but where I know I can have impact and I can show them the possibility of how taking social media to the next level can transform their connection with their residents, the people that, live in their communities.
I love this. So Bleacher Report, then you told a sports story. Josh Allen, quarterback of the Bills, versus Patrick Mahomes, quarterback of the Chiefs. And for those of you who are not football fans, the Bills have found every way to lose to the Chiefs in over the last 5 years. And Mahomes, along that way, has become a multiple times Super Bowl champion, usually walking over the Bills on their way. And what I think is really interesting, and I say this respectfully to all Bills fans, I get it. I am a Chiefs fan for a long time, so it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what teams we're talking about, but I really like the fact that you talked about that as being Andy Reid, the coach of the Chiefs, creating a structure that supports the creative endeavors of the leaders within the organization. And that's where permission comes in, right? So And I think you just talked about that at Bleacher Report, when Bleacher Report went from this independent entity into this thing under TNT. You had the organization had the structure because it was still there, but all of a sudden the permission changed, and they no longer had that shared vision, and they just didn't see the vision of what was being built under Bleacher Report, and it all went sideways. And this is this really like an example of how those you can have one, but if you don't have the other, nothing happens. If you have the other without the first one, the same thing. You don't get anywhere.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Right. And I'm very, for me, it was frustrating. The good thing, the positive end to the Bleacher story, the continuing story of Bleacher Report, is something else I feel very passionately about. Right, finding young people, and this I learned from Barry Diller. So Barry Diller, owner of Vimeo, one of the most interesting executives in media and technology. Right, he ran Paramount Pictures, youngest CEO of Paramount Pictures, went on to run Fox, created the Fox network when everybody thought he was crazy, and then left media and bought the Home Shopping Channel, which is like, it's so, this is somebody who had lived at the highest level of media working with the biggest companies, and his next move is to buy the Home Shopping Channel. But Barry saw at that moment something similar to what I saw at VidCon, which was the intersection of technology and media, right? People buying things off of television. It was nascent, it was new, but he was excited by it. Barry went on to found a few small companies like Expedia, Tinder, Match, Ticketmaster, just a few, Vimeo, right? Like he's done amazing things. So, Barry's success in finding these, in seeing the future and being curious and empowering people. Barry, when I worked with him, and he's spoken about this on many podcasts, talks about how he really does not like to find people with like deep resume experience. He throws people, his words, throws people into the deep end of the pool, and if they swim, they're going to be a great executive. If they sink to the bottom, I guess that was the wrong choice. But the CEO of Uber, for example, is a Barry Diller person. He threw him into a CFO role he was not qualified for, and he tells the story about how that prepared him for that moment. But Barry is very structured, right? Like if you work for Diller, you've got to be prepared to work within his structure, work within his brilliance, and use your young talents to affect this amazing outcome. So I embraced this at Bleacher Report, and I'm so proud of the two young people that worked under me. I invested in getting them career coaching. I invested in getting them, giving them resources to try and experiment with things because I believed in their talent. I put structure around them. I gave them a framework in which to work. And so once I left Bleacher Report, they have carried on and actually have succeeded where I was not able to succeed. They were able to, carve out a special place for Bleacher Report in the chaos that was Warner's being absorbed by Discovery, and now they're being split up again. Like these two young men have really taken the mantra, and all credit to them and their talents during my time there. But more importantly, after my time there, they've really embrace that structure and use their talent to make Bleacher Report an incredibly special part of the sports landscape.
I love that. So let's talk about this idea that when you combine these ideas and how you switch this now with working with government, right? So local governments, because I think that it's true that most of us don't realize that the layer of government that we intersect with most often is actually the municipal governments, the local governments. And they are likely the least empowered to be able to reach out to us, right? So you're creating this really interesting opportunity for them, aren't you?
100%. You have to think about things that you don't think about. When you turn on your tap water, right, you just expect that it's going to be drinkable, that it's going to be clean, that it's going to come out at all, right? When you flush your toilet, you expect it's just going to go away. When you put your trash out, you just expect that some magical truck is going to come and take it away for you. If you're, being menaced by a gang of people out, as you go shopping, you expect that you have a phone and you can call a dispatcher and they're going to send law enforcement. If your house catches fire, there's going to be a fire brigade that's going to come and put that fire out. Those are all functions of local government. And it lives in the back of our mind. It's not something we think of a lot. And one of the reasons is that government communications, the people that work in government are wonderful. I mean, truly, I've made a lot of money in the private sector. I had a great private sector career. I chose the private sector because I wanted to be ridiculously wealthy and successful, and I got that, right? So, but most people who go into public service do it because they have a sense of desire to help other people, to be contributing to a greater whole. Like that's why, and I'm not talking politicians. I'm talking about the fireman, the water works person, the parks worker who mows the grass. Like these are not high paid jobs. Yes, they have stability, and a lot of folks go into government for that, stability, the pension, all that stuff. But like most of the reason that people go into these roles is to help other people. And there's always been an expectation. If you're a government person listening to this podcast, you'll know the expectation is our work is quiet. We do that work, quietly, not braggadociously. That's for the politicians. Our job is to just keep things moving and we don't talk about it, right? That's the operating philosophy behind government. The problem is that media changed. And what we talked about just a moment ago was how that democratization of media, now anyone with a camera, now anyone with a microphone can define the narrative. And so what that means in the context of local government is once there were gatekeepers, just like there were in media, whereas MGM, had Stargate and Paramount had Star Trek, and this was the media that we watched. Back in the day, it was the local news, the local newspaper, the independent rag that people would read. And so the reporters or the owners of those stations or that news media or the radio, they were the gatekeepers. And in communications, the government public information officer would have a relationship with the traditional media. Sometimes, of course, the story would be told in a way that was sensational and not beneficial to government. But mostly that relationship was based in fact, based in, reality, truth. And all of a sudden that changed. And it changed just in the same way that 10 years we talked about with media changed. Like that change was profound. And so now you have what I call the STPs, the same 3 or 10 or 20 people, depending on the size of the municipality or county, that attack the work of government, not based in any kind of like, hey, we don't think our taxpayer dollars are being spent efficiently or do it this way or do it. They have a personal desire to get attention for themselves and put the government, these local governments on defense constantly. What happens because of this work is tax dollars, your tax dollars, my tax dollars are being basically funneled to these STPs and their pet projects because these are the voices that are constantly being surfaced to the elected officials who then push that work down to staff. The other thing that happens is staff feels demoralized. People are leaving local government. If you ask anyone in local government, they can't recruit people because people don't want these jobs because why would you want to feel awful about yourself all day? And so the premise behind this is, and just going to like the landscape before Sam in this space, right? What I solved or what I'm hoping to solve with this business. There are communications companies that will help governments do their press releases, and there are marketing companies who will help governments do their social media. The problem is, and being that I've worked with some of the top creators in social media, have run some of the top brands in social media, is I will tell you, marketers are terrible. Most of them haven't got a clue. There are exceptions. The young lady who does Nutter Butter on TikTok is brilliant. Duolingo does a really good job. Even Wendy's from time to time, smart. Taco Bell, some of the fast food brands get it. Most people think that social media is just another place to plunk advertising or get your message out. It's always about you. And they fail to understand the nature of the parasocial relationship that is core and key, the same relationship that those young kids had when they were chasing each other 10, 11 years ago, right? So if we can get government to humanize the work that they do, to showcase it, to come out of the shadows. This is the police officer who protects you. This is the person who makes sure your water's on. This is the young man who collects your trash. These are their day-to-day lives. These are who they are as people. This is their motivation, which is to help you. Now, all of a sudden, you get people who aren't the STPs coming to the defense of their local government, and it doesn't cost the government precious resources because they can do it themselves. Anyway, I talked a lot. This is a very, I'm very passionate about my new business.
But here's the thing that I think is really interesting about this. Somewhere somebody's listening to this, they're going to miss this really important part of it. And what the really important part of it is that you've taken this expertise and experience in private industry of scaling in a social media context, and governments aren't good at this for a lot of reasons, and you've identified some of them here, and you focused on your solution. But one of the things that's really interesting is I don't think people realize how you became flexible and created a much more structured approach than is usual in a social media context. So a lot of viral content is all based on being nimble and trend-based and blah, 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 blah. And governments aren't going to ever be good at that. What you've done is actually not chase that, but instead give them a structure, right, which they can build permission around to engage in this media in a way that's appropriate for them and for their audience. And I think that flexibility of behavior that that you've demonstrated is the part that an entrepreneur is missing listening to this, because they're hearing about your solution. But I think what's really interesting is that you reinvented yourself.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
You changed the way you talk. You can't go in there. There's no way you could go in and have the same kind of conversation you had with Diller when you're talking to city council, right? So talk about how you developed that flexible. What was the work you did to get into that flexible mindset?
Oh, this is such a great question. I love the way that you framed this. Yeah. I'll say one thing which is really interesting about something that's super flexible and different about what I do. And then I'll tell you how I got there, which is when I set up this business, I said, you really only need 5 days with me, 5 working days in any organization, and I will solve social media for you. I told it to the first city manager, and who happened to be the city manager that I had originally hired. He's now in San Clemente. And I said, I have this crazy idea. I want to run it by you. He said, it sounds intriguing. I said, let me do it with you for free. Let me come to San Clemente and I will run my program. And I want to prove to myself that this actually works. There's I don't know if you know the movie The Jerk, which is okay. So we have a shared passion for media. There's the scene where Steve Martin gets back into good graces with Bernadette Peters by having the stuff put on his face, the green mask.
Yeah, the green mask.
He gives the guy $100 and the guy leaves, and he puts the green mask in. So she's revealing, she thinks it's the guy that she had put the green mask on, but she reveals young Steve Martin. And the line that she gives is, this shit really works, right? It's a funny line. This was the feeling that I had, right? When I finished with San Clemente, like, oh, this shit really works. But the interesting thing, and a lot of my friends, both entrepreneurs, consultants, I have friends that work at McKinsey, I have friends that work at FTI, big consulting firms. When I was sharing with them like my new business and what I was doing, they said, you're insane. You're going to charge a client for a one-time engagement and you're going to have to constantly search for clients. Like, that's nuts. Also, you don't know anybody in local government. Like, you've never worked in this space. Like, this seems like a crazy idea. And that's true. I had literally 2 contacts in local government. I now have over 2,500 city managers, county managers that follow me on LinkedIn, right? And that's a year. The premise was, no, actually, the problem and where they need the solution isn't just about, my approach. It's about they have limited resources. They need something that they can implement. They need a structure that they can implement into their team, as opposed to hiring a consultant for months and months or years and years and spending tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. I need to solve this in order to differentiate. And the question I think that you asked that I didn't answer was, how did I become flexible? Well, I had to go back and put on my hat as a city council member, right? I had to remember what government was about, what the essence of their needs were. I think one of the things entrepreneurs, executives, everybody does all the time is they want to think about themselves, because we're all selfish people and we all think we're great and we all want to talk about we're the answer to your problem. And what they don't do is they don't listen to the problem. So when I put that government hat on, I'm like, we didn't have any budget for this kind of stuff. We were stretched thin. Our staffing, barely making it. Like, no government can hire a robust communications team that's needed to do this. Like, no government can devote resources. And so that was the getting to the place of, I need to listen and understand the problem versus here's my perfect solution, was the key to my being flexible.
But also, from the mindset shift, and look, if you were lucky because you were a civic leader in the past, you were somebody who was a city councilor in the past. But for people who aren't that, really, it's about having a conversation, a real conversation with somebody who is in that seat, and asking them, how do you look at this? What's your perspective? What's the situation? And we guess a lot of the times when we're building solutions, we guess, we think we have a clue, and we take a guess, and then we're shouting in our language about, hey, this is what you need to do. This is what you need to do. This is what you need to do, as opposed to just whispering in their language. And the ultimate realization is, if you're a leader in civic environment and municipal government and city government, you have people in a communications department. You can't fire them. You can't overrule them. You're an elected official, and they're going to be there when you're gone. And they know that.
Yep.
They know that you're here for a short time. So if you're going to try to bring somebody in with a magic wand to solve other problems, they're just going to wait it out. But if you make their life better, and I think this is the top line, where you've got staff on the left corner and civic government on the right corner, is you have to engage with them.
Yep.
Right. And it's not just about the person who's signing the paper. It's the people behind them, isn't it?
Oh, you nailed it 100%. Right. So there's so many directions to go here. I'm going to go back to this, the second point that popped in my mind, which is, I bet so many people who listen to your podcast, entrepreneurs, are wasting millions and millions of dollars on marketing. And it really you touched on the why. So I want to talk about that in the social media context. But as it relates to me personally, the thing I learned very quickly, again, having no contact in government, like most local governments operate under what is called a manager council form. That was how I was when I was a council member. Most governments in North America operate under this form, which is the board, which is the elected council, hires a CEO, which is a professional manager, and the professional manager ultimately makes decisions. And so my reaching out to city managers to begin this journey was not by accident. I wanted to get to the person who, like you said, signs the checks. What I came to realize quickly is, if I was not building an army of advocates in the communications role, right, the people who actually benefit from the services that I provide, then I was just going to be blockaded, because a lot of managers want to hire me, but they'll do what you said. They'll go to their communications person. And if the approach to the communications person is, you need help because you suck, right? And I got this guy who's going to bring the magic wand, guess what? I'm not getting that job, no matter how much the manager wants to do that, because managers in local government will not override their staff. This is different from the private sector, where, if you're a private sector CEO and you have a troublesome staff member, you just give them a pink slip and say, have a nice day. And government doesn't work that way. So you really have to build trust and value all the way down the chain. And to do that, you have to be very humble, and you have to listen, and you have to understand from the line staff and the communications perspective what their needs are, not what the city manager wants, which is to wave a wand and make the elected stop calling him at 3:00 in the morning about some Facebook post that's driving him crazy, right? So it's all very nuanced. The point I want to make about marketing is this. I cannot tell you the quantity of unsolicited garbage that comes across my LinkedIn feed, that comes into my LinkedIn inbox, and I'm a small entrepreneur. Now, imagine if you're a city manager, you manage a budget of 50 million, 100 million, $1 billion, right? Imagine and all of your information, including your email, is public because you're a public servant. Guess what? Those people are getting crushed by unsolicited content. Communications didn't just change in the sense of democratization. Communications changed in a relational sense. There is an overwhelming amount of information. Overwhelming. There are 5+ billion posts on social media every single day. And if you think that your little advertisement or your little message is going to reach its customer effectively, think again. You need, as an entrepreneur, to understand how to listen and how to develop a relationship with your customer by being selfless and by providing value. And that's what you do with this podcast. It's a good example, right? You're adding value to your audience. And that is a fundamental shift. So fire your marketing firm and figure out your own personal brand or your company's mission to add value, to create content that authentically resonates and creates parasocial relationship.
Yeah, Sam, you're so spot on with this. And I often, we'll have clients and I'll say, putting out an ad is like catching the right raindrop in a rainstorm, right? And it's not catching any raindrop. It's catching the right raindrop. You can't do it. It's just not possible. You can't see but the sheet of rain coming down. And that's what the average person's doing. They see the sheet of rain coming down. And what do? You either get out of the rain or you have an umbrella. Either way, you're shielding yourself away from the deluge. And that is the way most people are pummeled with information today. So I love how you shifted this, and you've created a conversation with civic governments across the nation. You talk about 13 states, Connecticut to California now, and you've grown your LinkedIn profile to 2,500 city managers all in 1 year. The other part of this, and I think this is really important for entrepreneurs listening, this may have sounded like at the beginning, right? When you started, you said, hey, I'm going to come down there. I'm going to do this for free. I'm going to see what it's work. I want to make sure that I can help you, right? You validated and tested it, got their feedback, made sure you had the confirmation. But in 1 year, you're at 2,500. Many people forget how much they can accomplish in a year if they stay at it. And that's the power that you have in this democratized environment, isn't it?
I think every entrepreneur probably has this moment because we live day to day. We only have ourselves to talk to, and often in the mirror. Even if you're an entrepreneur that runs a company with a large staff, the difference from me being the chief content officer at Bleacher Report or the head of digital at MGM is I had a boss. And if you were a CEO, you had a board, right? You can always find somebody to blame or to complain about or to say, if not for them, then, right? When you own your own business and when all of the success or failure is your own, the only person, regardless if you're a solopreneur or if you're an entrepreneur with 100 staff or 500 staff, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, if you are running a business that you own, you have to look in the mirror. There is no one else. And what you said is really profound. I think many entrepreneurs can find this. Day to day, I spend 12, 14 hours a day working on this business. I love it. I've never done anything. I've certainly made more money in my life doing work, other kinds of work. And I've certainly done work that had much higher profile. I mean, my friends who are CEOs at major streaming platforms and running social media platforms think I'm gone crazy for exiting my career at the time that I did. But I've never found more joy because I see the impact. Nothing brings me more joy than seeing city workers who don't make a lot of money and who do it for the right reasons, lighting up TikTok, lighting up Instagram, people that work really changing the game for their small town or their mid-sized city. It's so rewarding. But the thing that's crazy in this role that you really touched on is I rarely look and say, oh my gosh, I've been to 13 states. I'm going to my 14th state, going back to California, and then I'm going to my 14th state within the next 2 weeks, right? It's you don't think about the impact until you stop and look at the impact. I look at my LinkedIn. I look at my client success. You know, I people now in local government, it's hilarious to me. I think it's so fun. You know, in local government, I'll meet a city manager like, you're like a celebrity in local government. I'm like, really? Okay. That's so weird. But I just do what I look, put one foot in front of the other, put the work in to doing this. And in a year, you can be something that I had 2 contacts, like I said before, 2 contacts in local government. And now I'm people consider me some kind of celebrity in the world of city management. Like that's absolutely possible.
Bizarre. And that's bizarre, right? That's bizarre. You didn't see that.
It's bizarre. I've never considered. I truly have, like, I'm a kid from Buffalo, New York. I have my parents were teachers. My professional career amazed me beyond anything I could have ever imagined. And now this, like, it's just, I mean, God is good, blessings. But it's not luck. And everybody listening to you at whatever stage in your journey knows this. It is consistency and hard work and passion and also like failure goals.
Right.
Failure goals. Like when I got in front of Bleacher Report, interviewed 80 people before they selected me. And when I got in front of and it took a year and a half. And so I've got this new CEO who's got their brand new head of content. He's super excited. I'm sitting down in front of my team of 300 people, do my little speech. And then the first question is, so what do you expect from us? The team asks, one member of the team. And I said, my number one KPI is failure. And you could have heard Howard's neck snap. He's like, I just hired this guy on a contract and he's telling my team to fail. And I said, and I'm going to explain that. The reason I say my number one KPI is failure is because Howard's number one KPI is growth. If you don't fail, you won't learn. And if you can't learn, you won't grow. So if we as a team don't know how to learn and fail quickly and grow through that failure, we will never succeed in this business. Proof's in the pudding.
Permission. You gave him permission. So I like how much you care. And I love how much empathy is at the forefront of what you are doing. And I think this is an important thing that we can also talk about because social media is pretty toxic. And you talked about that at the beginning, right? And that's one of the reasons why civic governments stay away from it, because everybody's a critic on social media. How have you managed to, is there a tip that you've given them that our listeners can listen to as well as they go out and do more in social media and find their own voice, that they can keep with them when they're being, pummeled by critics?
Yes. So it's interesting, right? Social media is a term that people use, but it's a term that's personal to them. So if you're a avid user of X, formerly known as Twitter, and Facebook, you're living in a toxic environment. But if you are a 28-year-old or a 32-year-old who maybe has Facebook to check in with mom and grandma from time to time because they have Facebook, but you spend maybe once a week or twice a week, check in on the platform for a few minutes, and you live your life on TikTok and Instagram. Or if you're like, everybody says like Facebook is the platform that reaches everybody. It's BS. I'm sorry. The platform that reaches everybody is YouTube. So if your social media is what I call the triad, and this is what I really preach to my clients, I'm like, you can't get rid of Facebook, but you can spend less time there. You really need to focus on the triad, which reaches more people in your core demographics. And most importantly, those people are leaning towards the positive. They're looking for humor. They're looking for inspiration. They're looking to share. This is the key. In 1.0 social media, which is Twitter and Facebook, the original platforms, right? The key driver of the algorithm is comments. Well, comments are really about bringing attention to yourself, right? This is why we get into these god-awful comment screaming wars. When we think about mobile first, so your TikTok and Instagram, Snapchat to some degree, but really the core platforms, Instagram and TikTok, the core driver of the algorithm is not comments, it's shares. Well, what's the difference between a share and a comment? When you share something, you're giving someone a gift. When you take an action to share a fun video that you saw on TikTok or Instagram, you're not going to share outrage. I mean, that does happen, but the primary reason that you share is a positive intention. So my advice to people who are struggling on social media is it's not going away, but when you pick the place that you want to live, when you pick the neighborhood in social media that you want to be a part of, you can have a much different experience. I got rid of I still have Facebook, but I got rid of the app during the 2016 American election because it was just overwhelming and I couldn't tolerate my friends on the far extremes of politics. I'm a dead centrist, and so there's nothing in American politics that speaks to me anymore. But I just couldn't stand it anymore. So I deleted the app. I still have the .com that I can log in on the web and check in with my dad or my mom, the old people that use Facebook. It was like getting a 10,000 pound weight lifted off my shoulders, and it was instant, right? I was like, this is awful. And this is what these local governments are experiencing. They're stuck in the wrong neighborhood. They need to move their attention and focus to a place where there is positivity and a focus on shares.
I love that. Speaking of positivity and a focus on shares, about a year ago, we lost a Paper Napkin Wisdom contributor. His name was John Rulin, and he left us with a great napkin, which is what you appreciate appreciates. And he started a movement in the years that followed his appearance on Paper Napkin Wisdom. He was a great friend of the show. And what we've been doing since that time is paying forward that idea that what you appreciate appreciates by sharing some gratitude into the world. Is there anybody that you'd like to shout out and give some love or gratitude to?
Oh, I mean, my list is too long to count, but I think I'm going to use Andy Hall. Andy was the city manager in Cathedral City that I hired. And because our council was a bit toxic, he left shortly after we hired him and went off to another city, but ended up in San Clemente. I am beyond grateful to Andy for taking a chance to basically let me guinea pig with his staff for 2 weeks in San Clemente to build CiviSocial. Without his belief in my intention, in my talent, there would be no CiviSocial because I would never have gotten the opportunity to see this magic come to life. And of course, for every city, county, village, and town that has worked with me, and I mean every single one of them, they all delight me and amaze me and give me life and give me energy to do what I do.
I love that. Thanks, Sam. Thanks for joining me.
My pleasure. This was fun.
What an incredible conversation with Sam Toles. I'm so grateful he joined us and shared his insights. His napkin reminds us that success isn't random. It emerges when two simple, essential forces come together: permission, structure, and when you find the right balance between the two, what opens up can transform your team, your leadership, and even your community. Let's pause on that for a moment, because you might already be thinking of the places in your world where permission has been missing or where structure has felt too loose. And what would it look like if you shifted just one of those pieces? Here are a few key takeaways we touched on today. Permission fuels creativity. Structure creates consistency, and balance leads to sustainable success. So, it's your turn. Where will you apply this formula? Take a napkin, write down your takeaway, and share it using the hashtag #PaperNapkinWisdom. And if today's episode sparked something for you, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and most importantly, share it with someone who needs this wisdom. Because, as always, it's not the big gestures, but the small, simple insights, like the ones we write and share on a napkin, that can lead to the biggest results. Make it a great day.